Exotic animals are generally defined as rare or unusual animals to keep and doesn't necessarily comment on the originating country of that animal being abroad. Let's take my animal ownage history into account. I've had dogs, which originate from Eurasia, cats, which can be found to have been domesticated as far back as ancient Egypt, hamsters that come from Syria, gerbils that have been found in Africa, India, and other parts of Asia, koi, which originate in China and Japan, and rabbits, whose ancestors, which would later evolve into our domesticated rabbits, have been found in parts of Asia. I do recognise that many of these different animals have evolutionary roots across the globe, but the locations that I've mentioned in regards to each animal is where they can be pinpointed to have originated from. None of these are native to England, but none of them are exotic either. Hamsters are far from what you'd consider to be an exotic pet. Owning exotic animals in the West is not a new trend. The second Duke of Richmond, Charles Lennox, owned a menagerie of animals in his time, including leopards, a lioness, and at least 3 bears. Dean of Westminster William Buckland also had a large array of animals, which isn't surprising considering he was a zoologist. But then again, he also ate a lot of different types of animal. According to him, panther and crocodile don't taste that good. But this is the same man who ate King Louis XIII's mummified heart. That's a story for another day. Even though human beings have taken in exotic animals, it's never not been controversial. And I'll give my own take on this. This can include zoos as well. Generally, I don't think people should be able to own exotic animals. Most of these animals are not suited for the environments that we have in the West, let alone in our own homes. Not only is it bad for the animal not to have the right environment for them and enough space to move around as they would in the wild, but some of these animals are highly dangerous, and if they got out either intentionally or unintentionally on the owner's behalf, it could be deadly. There are very few animals that are legal to have as exotic pets in the United Kingdom without having to have a license. One of these animals are sugar gliders, which you can have without a license, and I would love to have sugar gliders, but I would only ever get sugar gliders in certain circumstances. Number one, I would never get them from a breeder, I would instead adopt them from a rescue centre. A big problem are breeders breeding certain animals, people buying those animals and then not realising how much work they actually are, which is why currently in my local area there are about 10 pairs of sugar gliders available for adoption. And number two, I would only ever adopt if I had a wide open space netted off. This is so the sugar gliders had the right amount of space to move around in without being caught by other predators such as cats. It does make me really sad to think about sugar gliders currently in shelters in really small cages where they can barely stretch their little gliding flaps. They're not wings, they're more arm flaps. I don't know. Generally, I don't like the idea of breeding animals when there are already animals in shelters, and would only ever get an exotic animal from a shelter in order to give it a slightly better life than what it would have had in that shelter. Many of these animals can't be given to zoos or released back into the wild because they are born in captivity and are used to just having a domesticated environment. In regards to zoos, I understand that many people do not like zoos and think that animals should deserve to be in the wild, and I completely understand that. But I also understand that some zoos are necessary. For example, zoos that run conservationist projects, increasing the amount of animals in a given population, particularly endangered populations of animals. Unfortunately, some of these projects are necessary because the habitats have either been decreased in size or just aren't suitable for the animals anymore because of humans. Other zoos will take in neglected exotic pets or neglected circus animals, and even animals from shelters, like I mentioned before, that may be suited to the zoo environment. A really good example of this is Monkey World in Dorset, that specialises in, surprise surprise, monkeys, many of which have been rescued from neglectful homes or for being performance animals, and they intend to rehabilitate them and even possibly release them into the wild, and if not them, then any offspring they may have. A lot of people don't like zoos because people come in and pay to stare at animals and treat them like some kind of exhibit, but unfortunately a lot of these zoos will run off of visitor fees and donations, and therefore they need to have people come in to see the animals in order to fund what they are doing. I now want to go into two cases that will detail the dangers of owning certain exotic animals, particularly wild and dangerous animals. The first is the case of Travis the chimp. In October 1995, couple Sandra and Jerome Herold from Stamford, Connecticut, purchased an infant chimp for $50,000, who they named Travis. He was only 3 days old when he was torn apart from his mother. For contrast, wild chimpanzees are not weaned off of their mother's milk and begin to eat other foods until they are about 5 years old, and they stay close with their mothers for the first decade of their lives. Even though Sandra and Jerome had already raised a daughter, they treated Travis like a human child, dressing him in clothes, teaching him to use the toilet, and feeding him the same foods that they ate. Travis was a welcome addition to the community, known as a friendly animal that could recognize faces and show affection to those he liked. He became even more precious to the pair after they tragically lost their daughter and only child to a fatal car accident in 2000. But when Travis turned 8, red flags would begin to crop up. In October 2003, Travis was in the family car with Sandra and Jerome. While they were stuck at a traffic light, a pedestrian threw an empty can through the partially open window which hit Travis. He unbuckled his seatbelt, got out the car, and began to chase the man. Police tried to lure Travis back into the car upon arrival, but he instead began to chase them. The incident led to the Connecticut law prohibiting people from keeping primates more than 50 kilograms as pets, which came into effect in 2009. However, the Department of Environmental Protection did not deem Travis a public risk. Further misfortune fell the family. Jerome was diagnosed with cancer and died in 2004. This worsened Sandra's existing depression. She let go of taking care of herself and Travis, who would become obese at 200 pounds when he was 14 years old. Again, to contrast, chimpanzees reach adulthood at 16, and wild male adult chimps weigh between 88 to 154 pounds. This means that Travis was already between 46 to 112 pounds overweight before reaching adulthood. I don't know if this needs to be said, but chimpanzees shouldn't be eating human food. They shouldn't be eating junk food and takeaway and ice cream like Travis did. It's not healthy for them. It's going to cause problems. For the love of God, stop. And yet the worst incident was still yet to come. February 16th, around 3:40 p.m., Travis, unprovoked, attacked Sandra's visiting friend Charla Nash, inflicting catastrophic injuries. Sandra tried to stop him, first by hitting him with a shovel, then stabbing him in the back with a kitchen knife. This didn't stop Travis, instead making him angrier. Believing Charla was dead, Sandra locked herself in the trunk and called 911. When the police arrived, he made a beeline for the car. The end result was Travis being shot many times until he retreated into the house and was later found dead by his cage. Charla did not die from the attack, but suffered greatly. Travis had broken every bone in her face, removed one of her hands and most of the other. He gouged out her eyes and tore off her eyelids, nose, jaw, lips, and most of her scalp. Charla has had numerous procedures to restore her face, but she would never have eyesight again. There were 2 victims of this eventual last incident. The first being Travis, torn away from his mother well before he should have been. Naturally in the wild, he would remain with his mother for a good 15 years. Instead, he only got 3 days before the breeder ripped them apart. And then he was given a human life which, in the long run, would have devastated his health. Again, he was eating mass amounts of junk food and food that chimpanzees just should not eat. He was obese before he reached adulthood. Even if these incidents didn't happen and he was a completely fine and happy chimpanzee, it would eventually lead to definite heart problems among many other things for him. And the second victim was, of course, Charla. Charla had no reason to believe that Travis would be violent. He never had before. But this is a chimpanzee, this is a wild animal, and Sandra and Jerome had absolutely no business bringing this animal into their home. The second is the Zanesville Zoo Escape, 2011. October 11th, 2011, Zanesville, Ohio. Just before 5 p.m., Sam Kopchak noticed his horse Red had bolted up the hill as if running away from something. Sam followed and noticed other horses were circling around, and in the center was a bear. Quickly, he took Red's reins and began walking him back to the barn, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Sam then noticed a male African lion staring at them from the other side of the low wire fence. Not wanting to leave his horse, Sam continued to walk to the barn. After securing Red, he called his mother to warn her of the danger before alerting the police. Within the hour, reports of animal sightings increased. Tigers, bears, lions. And where they came from was no mystery, but how they got out was. Terry Thompson was known to be a man who loved danger. Fast boats, fast cars, fast aeroplanes, all of which he hoarded. He also hoarded animals. Him and his wife Marion living at Muskingum County Animal Farm, their own private zoo. They started with horses, but this wasn't enough for the adrenaline junkie that Terry was. His first exotic animal was a lion cub, and it went from there. Before 2011, police had been called out on 7 occasions in relation to the escaped animals of Terry. He owned many different types of animals. Horses, dogs, camels, tigers, black bears, grizzly bears, wolves, mountain lions, African lions and lionesses, leopards and monkeys, including a macaque and a baboon. I'm assuming due to the lack of reporting of previous escape incidents that occurred, it was only the non-threatening animals that managed to get out. It was later discovered that this 8th escape was no accident. In October 2010, Terry was sentenced to 10 months in prison for possession of many unlicensed firearms, something he also hoarded. His wife Marion was left to run the farm, including at least 56 wild and dangerous animals. It took its toll, many neighbours noticing that she lost a lot of weight and appeared to be weak, tired and fragile. As the months went by, she couldn't take it anymore and left Terry after 34 years of marriage. And then we come back to the 11th of October 2011. Terry cuts holes into the wire cages outside and proceeds to end his life by shooting himself in the head. 50 out of 56 of his exotic animals had to be hunted by the police to prevent harm to the public. 48 were shot by officers, while 2 were assumed to have been killed by other animals upon release. Animals confirmed dead were 18 Bengal tigers, which by the way is the equivalent of 1% of the population of tigers in the wild, 6 black bears, 2 grizzly bears, 2 wolves, a macaque monkey, a baboon, 3 mountain lions, 9 male African lions, and 8 African lionesses. 3 leopards, a small bear and 2 monkeys were left caged inside Terry's home, which were tranquilized and later sent to Columbus Zoo. I'm not sure what happened to the camel. I know Terry at one point at least owned 1 camel. I don't know if the camel died before this incident or was one of the animals that was killed after the escape by the other animals, but there's no mention of the camel anywhere, so I'm unsure. The original plan by the police were to tranquilize and subdue as many of the animals as they could, but this quickly was ruled out as impossible. They did receive a lot of hate for putting the animals down, but I understand why they did it. It takes a lot of tranquilizer to simply put one of these animals to sleep. And there were like 50 of them. And even if they managed to get a good shot and hit the animal on target, it could still take up to 10 minutes for the tranquilizer to set in. And in that time, lions can leap up to 36 feet at a time, and tigers can leap up to 20 feet at a time. So even if they manage to tranquilize the animal in those 10 minutes it takes for it to set in, they could cover large distances and get even more out of control. The sad thing about both of these cases is that it's not really up to the police to look after these animals. They are there to serve the public and the public's safety, which is why these animals in the second case were put down. It's up to the owner to make sure that the animal is secure, which is why I believe that these people shouldn't have been able to get a hold of these animals in the first place. Sure, lions can be really cute and fluffy when they're first born and they're little, but then they grow up and suddenly you've got a 570-pound male adult lion on your hands. And even before you get to that stage when you're at the breeder or you're purchasing off an auction, think of where the animals come from. There are two main ways to obtain baby animals. The first is through poachers who will go into the wild, who will either tranquilize or shoot the mother before taking the baby away. Or you go to a breeder where very much the same thing happens, just in a domesticated environment. They don't even have the chance to grow up properly. There will be developmental and biological problems from ripping this infant away from their mother. While humans and animals are vastly different when it comes to development and biology and consciousness, they still have the same developmental needs, roughly. Imagine if you've just had a child and you're in the hospital cradling your baby. After the first couple of days, somebody comes in with a tranq gun, knocks you out and takes your baby away. It can cause long-term emotional and psychological damage to both mother and baby. If you watched my last video on attachments, attachments aren't just something that humans have. It's an evolutionary biological thing that happens between a mother and a baby of all species in order for survival. It's been proven that many different species of animals can feel distress when taken away from a loved one. Chimpanzees in particular can die of grief. So I just want to sum up my thoughts here. I don't think that an infant animal should be taken away from its mother just to please humans, for the pleasure and the entertainment of human beings. That is dystopian as hell. I think the only efforts when it comes to breeding animals is helping endangered and at-risk populations of animals so they don't go extinct. And I think countries around the globe need to have a much stricter view when it comes to the breeding and selling of animals, particularly exotic, dangerous animals. So what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below if you have any thoughts or feelings. I'd love to have a discussion with you, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.